Let's get the latest on the situation in Ukraine then and take stock of where we've come over 6 months. Marc Champion, our senior reporter for international affairs, joins us here in London. Marc, a very good morning to you. Let us think about where we are now and also where we've been over 6 months. We're 6 months in. We had these warnings that Russia's strikes could intensify. What is the state of play right now then?
Well, essentially, it's extremely stable. If you think at the beginning of the war, we didn't know where the front line would be from day to day, from hour to hour almost, around Kiev in particular. It's one of the reasons why a number of people got hurt and killed, covering the story. Today, it's a much more stable situation, but that's not necessarily a good thing. Neither side really has the force, the ability to break through the other. The Russians are, moving troops around, but digging them in to make sure that they can't be pushed back. Neither side is willing to talk. Neither side is ready for a ceasefire. The Ukrainians, the Russians are now in control of 20% of Ukrainian territory. They control parts of it, including the bottom of the Dnipro River, that make the economy almost very difficult to function. So there's very little prospect of an end to the war. And how it ends, I think really nobody knows.
Marc, you've kind of answered my follow-up question there. That you're saying it's exceptionally stable. There's a kind of a stalemate there. The Russian troops are digging in. Neither side's willing to talk. So, what is the timeline we're talking about for this invasion now? Are we presuming this is going to last for years, or is there any sign of any optimism on the horizon?
There's very little optimism, but as to whether it's another 6 months or years, that again is very difficult to say. One thing, in terms of a war that lasts for years, there are reasons that either side is going to find it difficult to continue for a long time. For the Ukrainians, they are completely dependent on aid, military aid, financial aid from the West. For the Russians, they are under sanctions, and it is very difficult for them to replace their munitions. They don't have, there was a study recently that said, in 27 different Russian weapon systems, they found 450 different pieces of Western, components, most of them American. To get those to, replace the stuff that's being fired is going to be quite difficult for the Russians too. So there may be a hard stop on the war, but where that is, we don't know.
And as we mark this 6 months of the war taking place, Marc, you've written an interesting piece that goes back to some of the assumptions we made at the beginning of the conflict about how quickly it would be over, how strong the Russian military would be, how quickly Kiev might be taken, and all sorts of other assumptions, how Russia might respond. And our assessments, I suppose, have been found wanting, or the international community's assessments. What have we learned about, for example, the strength of the Russian military?
Well, it's much weaker, much less efficient, and its command is less competent than we thought. Its equipment, which they've been modernizing for the last decade, and many people had thought that some of this was, better than American equipment, NATO equipment. All of those assumptions are being questioned now. And it's, if you look at how difficult a time the Russians have had putting together a combined forces operation, what, many analysts say is that, they aren't able to do things that even medium-sized NATO countries are able to do. So that has really made us rethink. At the same time, of course, we've also learned that President Putin is willing to take chances that we didn't think he was.